First off, just to set the scene here, my name is Chris. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Encircle. The reason for today's discussion, I think everyone can agree, one of the number one problems facing the industry at the moment is employee retention and turnover. This is one of the most consistent themes across our industry reports, specifically the RIA Cost of Doing Business report, sponsored by Know How. The goal of today's session is to hear from a ton of restoration experts about the industry trends that are going to have an impact on the restoration industry, on your specific businesses, and then how you as owners and operators can navigate these trends to build successful businesses as well as staff with high retention and growth opportunities. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation here today or the discussion here today, I want to give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. Ben, if we want to start with you.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned all-star panelists, and I'm in awe that I'm in with this group of all-stars. I'm not included in that list, but I'm grateful that y'all included me on this. But thankful to be here. Ben Looper, Southeast Restoration, based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Been in the industry for 31 years. Current president of the RIA.
Awesome. I think Leighton, maybe you're next there.
Chris, thanks for having me. Leighton Healy, the CEO at Know How, and we're a software vendor here in the industry. We focus on how you accelerate workforces and all the onboarding and knowledge management. And so thanks for the opportunity to contribute.
Great. Thanks for joining. Over to you, Marcy.
Hey, thanks, Chris. My name is Marcy Richardson with Guarantee Restoration out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm the COO, and I've been in the industry about 7 years.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. And then Alexis, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. I'm very grateful to be able to talk about something that we're all passionate about. My name is Alexis Neidert. I am head of brand and culture at Thomasville Restoration, located out of Baltimore, Maryland.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today, Alexis. So to set the stage here, there's kind of three key topics that we're going to be discussing. The first one is going to be employee well-being and mental health. The second one is going to be building a really, really strong culture. Alexis, really looking forward to hearing from you on that. And then the last is going to be continuing education. Everyone in this group here is heavily involved in the RIA, so obviously continuing education is a passion of theirs. So those are going to be kind of the three main topics that we're going to discuss. Once again, anywhere along the way here, as there are questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we might be able to get to them as well. First topic I want to discuss here is well-being, employee well-being, and safety. One of the biggest trends that we have right now is mental health, well-being initiatives in the workplace. First question here for the group, whoever wants to take it, is how can focusing on employee wellness benefit the business owner? What is the ROI to your business by focusing on that mental health?
I think it's really important to focus on that because it's always hard because with ROI, it's always difficult to gauge the cultural impact that it has when you're trying to look for a specific number. But I think that when you have teammates who are passionate about what they do, who feel heard, loved, valued, and cared for, they're going to create an incredible experience for your customers. And, it's that old Richard Branson quote where if you take care of your team will take care of your company. And so when your teammates are thrilled to show up to work every day and do the really difficult work that it is that they do, the customers experience it. You're gonna get better surveys, you're gonna get better Google reviews, and just cheerleaders are going to be cheerleaders for your organization. That your customers will be cheerleaders for your organization throughout the rest of their lives. Hopefully they never have to use you again, but unfortunately, the restoration industry makes it a little bit tough. But yeah, having people who are super passionate about what they do will directly impact your customers. They will want to work harder. They will want to create better margins and have that ownership.
I think along with that, Chris, is that when people feel a sense of value and they feel safe, and they know that you genuinely care about who they are as a person, they're going to show up 100% different. We talk about ROI, and that is what business owners and us in the industry and leaders do care about. And the ROI, sure, isn't necessarily something you're going to be able to track and see today, but you will see a smile. You will see a pep in their step. And when you start tracking and you intentionally change that culture of safety and the well-being, and you focus on the person and not just that employee, you're going to see it time over time that quarter after quarter, the less warranty calls, less call outs, things, the retention is going to go up. So there is a trend that you're going to see when you start focusing on that person and their well-being.
And one thing I'll add is, and often an area where I think we fail to survey, and we fail to kind of stick a thermometer in with workforces, is that conversation when they walk through the door at home, and someone, a loved one, a partner, a spouse, asks them, "How was your day?" And that's an amazing litmus test. Is, you know, the ability of impacting that conversation, and to be able to get a sense, you know, would a spouse or a partner, someone at home that cares for that individual, how would they describe whether or not their loved one is cared for, and does their employer seem to care about their health and vitality? Because I will tell you, one of the strongest ways to retain a workforce is to have someone at home who believes that the company cares about their spouse or partner or loved one, who believes that they have a kind of their best intention. Because when that person comes home and has maybe a tough day, because there are tough days in this industry, for them to kind of provide a sobering reminder that, hey, remember, there's some practical ways that company has really gone out of its way to care for you. You shared that story about that one colleague with that real setback in their personal life, and the company really stepped up. And so not just optimizing for the employment experience, but also thinking about how are we optimizing for things even on the home front, so that we build, you know, in a sense, champions and ambassadors at home is something that I think is very important.
It's so good.
I think this group has hit on all the important things. The only thing I will add to that is Leighton, you just hit on it, you know, yourself, but generations in the past, our parents and our grandparents' generation came from workforces and workplaces that you know, maybe didn't have the outside distractions that our world has today. They didn't know what was going on, and so you know, there are people in today's society, and the current generations are being told things that maybe aren't true, or they wouldn't have known otherwise. But it's critical to stay out in front, and to your point, show them their self-worth and how important it is. There is a cost associated. We all are aware, and there is a cost associated with you know, with team members coming and going, and retention, you know, there. So that's the part that nobody wants to talk about, but it's a real factor that plays in day after day, you know, to your bottom lines, and you know, bringing in new talent, and having to train them, and then, you know, essentially them leaving. But you know, having the generations haven't changed in the place where they want to be cared for. They want their work to be recognized and to be thought well of. So our people are our number one assets, and I think it's easy in business for us to focus on all the things that are going on around us, and all the things that, you know, maybe are on a balance sheet or on a P&L, but it's not as easy if we're not intentional about it to leave the people equation out. So I think putting effort and focus on those people in order to reduce you know, the turnover is important for each of our organizations and for our industry as we move forward.
Absolutely. And Ben, I think that segues really nicely into the next question. I know it's a massive priority of the RIA and the industry to get more young people into the industry. You know, obviously, you know, yourself, I know you have your children in the business. You know, you've been in the business for 31 years now. It's kind of this dichotomy where we have rates of anxiety, depression, mental illness up among young people, as we mentioned, you know, in that 18 to 25 range, but we want to get more people into the industry. but it's also an extremely high stress environment to operate in. So I'm wondering, I think maybe Marcy had some insight into this, but how does the high stress nature of restoration affect employees, mental health, job satisfaction, and retention, and what are some strategies that we can implement specifically maybe with young people in order to keep them around?
Yeah, it definitely takes a special person who's wanting to get into restoration, right? Nobody thinks, hey, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to wake up at 1 a.m. in the morning and go handle some sewer loss, right? Like there's some struggles and challenges that come along with that. But, I've said it before, and I think one of the easiest ways for us to effectively combat whatever stresses, daily stresses are going on, and Leighton hit on this at the home, but I think it's you ask your people, hey, how is it going? And you actually care about that question and the answer that you're going to get back. There's so many times that we take that question as just a flyby, and it's a greeting and not necessarily you care to hear the answer. But in that 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever you're doing to get that answer, you can gauge how they're feeling. Hey, should they go out on a job today? What's their mode and their mood like? And you can determine all of that. And that, what, why don't you stay back today? Or hey, why don't you take a day? And whatever that looks like. And when you really care about that one person and listen to an answer simple, hey, how is it going? How is your day? I think that would change completely of what the return we're going to get, right? And the value somebody's going to feel.
Absolutely. Anyone else care to comment on that? Leighton, I know you've done some surveying on mental health before and have some educational background in it.
We have, and so another study that we're involved in with CNR Magazine is called State of the Restoration Industry. This year, for the first time, we looked at, asking questions around the role of employee burnout and how you start to think about employee health. And only 17% of companies in the restoration industry indicated that they like the topic of, say, employee health and mental health and kind of burnout more specifically is just not something we discuss. So what that means is that the vast majority of companies recognize that it's a factor and we have to talk about it. But just to double click on anxiety and just to build on what Marcy was saying, which I think is super important. Anxiety is different than depression in that anxiety is really about, the fear of the unknown, right? And so much of the volatility in this market, in this industry, creates a lot of unknowns. But what you can do is you can anchor a worker to what can be predicted. Like, for example, the ability to introduce cultural themes and kind of rituals. This job is getting really crazy, but at least I know that tomorrow's the second Friday of every month, that we do this the second Friday of every month. Or I know that, I was told that in my onboarding in 90 days in, this happens. And so this job is, this customer is really being difficult to deal with, and that's creating some uncertainty. I don't know what kind of volatility is going to be on this job site. When I come back tomorrow, is the same difficult customer going to be here? But what I do know for certain is that next week, I crossed that 90-day milestone, and the team has told me that there's kind of this thing that they do to kind of, in a sense, recognize, that 90-day component. So a lot of anxiety is about dealing with that pressure of the unknown. There's if you're looking for an audiobook to listen to, Jonathan Haidt's a great social psychologist in the US, put a book out called Anxious Generation earlier this year in April, really helped to understand how Gen Zs, the impact of anxiety on them, especially if people that are listening have kids or nieces or nephews or grandkids in those young generations. I think it'd be very there's a reason why, probably Australia is thinking seriously about banning cell phones in, kids under 16. But a lot of it is because there are some factors that are creating some uncertainty. And so there are some very practical things that you can do to create, in a sense, anchors in the storm of what can be an unpredictable industry. And one thing I'll just say very practical is that I've seen very successful, especially if you have large teams that change constantly. Everyone here has a smartphone. Every phone has some version of kind of a note. And that ability, when you have an interaction with someone, just by their name, just write some bullet points, what their kids' names are, just kind of what the sports team they cheer for, stuff like that is. taking 30 seconds before you step on site or you step into their office or their cubicle or where they work in the contents area of the business, and just remembering that their kid's name, is Alex and Mila, and to say, hey, how's Alex and Mila? You may not have remembered that 27 seconds ago, and you needed a prompt. But to a team member, it's not weird or manipulative for that you needed to remember it. What feels good is that when you take a personalized approach and you have simple systems in place to support that. But that's what I would say.
Awesome.
We
I think that's great practical tips. Alexis, over to you. Sorry. I'll direct the next one to you as well.
So, we were talking a lot about how this generation struggles so much with anxiety, and a lot of that was induced during COVID. There's so much less opportunity for young adults to connect with one another. I quote Winning with Workers. Leighton talks a lot about that in the book, about how there's not as much community opportunity. And a lot of our teammates are spending an incredible amount of time with us, more than they are creating community outside. So it's important to make sure that, you're fostering a community within your organization. Thomasville during COVID had the fortunate opportunity to bring in an on-staff business and life coach who is accessible to our team completely free of charge. And so she is able to help people with personal development when they are trying to grow within their leadership skills, with relational development, because like you said, you have to take care of the whole person, and that whole person includes their family members. So Marcy, I love that you touched on that. And she will go through and work with people. Again, she's completely free and accessible to us. She's on staff, and that might not be a solution that everybody is able to do or something that they're able to access. So having somebody who can prioritize those things starts from the top. You work it with your leadership team and make sure your leadership team is taking the time to work with your teammates if you can't have an on staff, life coach or mental health person. But it's been really a really great resource for us. We had a team member recently suddenly pass away, who she was there to do grief counseling and go through that process as well. So it's been a really nice feature for us, but that community aspect is so important, creating community within your organization.
With that, I would love to move on to topic 2. We got a ton to discuss still, which is culture. So how do we build a strategy for long-term retention? I think Ben and Marcy had kind of touched on this as well, but one of the topics that we like to bring up here is corporate social responsibility. So what is that sense of being and belonging that an employee has, more so than just a paycheck, right? I think we had someone in the chat here mention that, kind of like Ben mentioned, that every $2 you don't spend trying to find someone new, you can spend $1 on an employee, keeping them around, right? Which is obviously a great way to look at it. We have a couple multi-generation restorers in the building here. We have Ben and we also have Alexis. First question for the group here is, how do you find generational values have impacted employee expectations? Specifically, what's the difference you find between your Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers, et cetera, in your business? So Ben, maybe we'll kick it over to you to start.
Thank you. Yes, I've got a son that's in the business, had a daughter that was in the business for a couple of years, but the generational difference really has come with the accessibility of information and that they have now. I tell people all the time, this generation, it appears, is a lot smarter than we were back, because they have access to the information. But they've with that they also would be considered potentially to be lazier in the world's perspective of what kind of work they do and how they do it. So I think we have to be careful in judging and from a generational perspective on how things go, and look at really where we are as a society and where we're moving in the future. And COVID was brought up earlier, and that changed how this industry handles business. And now in the workplace, having certain roles that have flexibility to have some work from home opportunities or flexibility in the schedule is a commonplace, as opposed to before 2020 that was unheard of almost. I mean, it was only certain companies were willing to step out on that ledge, and now it's become commonplace. So I think, looking at, there has been the revert, we're in an industry where we're in the service industry. Some of our positions will not allow that to be the case, but then there's some where we have to be smart about different people's situations and the different generations, and see if it makes sense for, them, and can they be more productive, in working from an independent environment, there. So I think we just have to continue to look at, all the tools that are available to us as an industry and in our organizations, and be able to utilize them to our benefit, at the end of the day, to speak to this next generation, and them be as productive and profitable, as they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we found, at Encircle, the talent pool that it opens it up to, when you're able to have, some flexibility in working conditions, right, can be super beneficial for the business. You may be able to hire people that previously would not have been an option. So really exciting opportunities there. Alexis, I know you got a lot of experience with this. What would you say the differences are?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because my dad, the founder, did not have a laptop up until 5 years ago. So he was running a restoration company from his Android cell phone. So it's funny how how technology has been one of those really big features. I think that if you are an ever-changing dynamic organization that is constantly embracing change, when you are bringing in teammates who might be from multiple different generations, you're going to be scoping that person to make sure that they're going to fit within that culture. Are they going to be adaptive? Are they going to be ever changing? So that's the one side. But then we have the responsibility as leadership to make sure that if we're introducing new softwares, new technology, new processes, that we are scrutinizing them. Our CEO, Andy, does an incredible job by asking a ton of questions. I mean, we just instituted know-how, and Leighton and I have been friends for 5 years. So it took us 5 years to pull that trigger, and it's the best decision ever because it was at the right time. But being really well versed on the technology that's available, shout out to the RIAA conference. That's an incredible opportunity for you to have that exposure to the new and the now of what's happening in the industry. But also being very slow in making the decisions that are going to be implemented. Make sure that it's so easy that my dad, who just got a laptop 5 years ago, can do it, and he can do it well, and he can do it with the level of excellence that, our Thomasville touch requires.
Yeah.
If I can jump on that, Chris, go ahead, Marcia.
Well, just to go through that, and when you're talking about generations and building long-term strategy, and what you're looking is realizing at this day and age, we have every generation in our workforce, right? And so realizing that everybody has a value and the knowledge that they bring. And we know that long-term retention, if we want to get these Gen Zers in our system and with us, listen to the boomers, create programs or a mentorship where those boomers have so much knowledge, and yet they may not do the same thing. They may not have the same quickness on technology, but the knowledge that they hold and they carry is so valuable and important. And to create some kind of mentorship program, or where you spend some time with that Gen Z or to the boomer, to whomever, for long-term retention, it's vital for each individual company to identify, these boomers and these, what's the generation above them? I don't remember, but they just carry a lot of knowledge with that. And if for us as we grow, that we can't just always focus on those Gen Zers, even though technology and everything is moving, and we have to really respect the knowledge that the older generations did, and really the foundation that everything has been built on. And how can we just not go along, but we're moving forward, right? And we're moving forward with technology into where we're going. So to have long-term retention, don't forget of where the slower people, right? The older people are on that.
I think it's, to Marcia's point, I think it's important for our generation, to recognize and realize what's important to the younger, generations, because our generations of the past, and the reason for the longer tenure, they had a lot of golden handcuffs with the organizations that they were part of, whether it be, healthcare benefits or pensions or, whatever it was, where that's getting harder and harder for employers, these days to make those numbers make sense because of where the cost has gone. But at the same time, the newer generation are looking in the here and now. And so we have to recognize that and understand what's important to them and speak to them and, the language that, they're interested in, because some of the things that may have been important to us or generations in the past may not be as important, today.
That's so good, Ben. That's so good.
One of the things I'd add, Chris, just to build on, I mean, first off, one of the things that I think Southeast, Guarantee, and Thomasville, they do such a good job of is they don't just incubate and maintain a great culture, but they leverage it, meaning they show pictures and visuals of what it's like here. We did a study, Alexis referred to it earlier, where we dug in and we tried to understand not just at every generation, but each role. Why do people take the job? Today's panel is discussing attracting talent. And, I was speaking with someone last week and they've got 20,000 staff. And they said, our biggest thing we're trying to focus on in 2025 is how do we attract a higher caliber person? Because we think if we have A players, it'll solve like 50% of our issues. And, but I can tell you that certain roles, particularly the administrative roles, especially for people who are kind of in that millennial and kind of that Gen X role, their perception of what the culture is one of the number one reasons why they took the job. When you survey hundreds of people, it's what they perceived the culture to be like before they showed up, right? And so your ability to be able to make it easy for someone, I'm going to Orlando tomorrow, and and who has ever vacationed and not looked at pictures of what they think the vibe will be like when they're there, and so I'm always amazed at how companies that build culture don't always think about, how do we also make it easy for people to look in through the window, kind of fog up the glass and place themselves and visualize themselves in the culture. And just kudos to Southeast and Guarantee and Thomasville. I think are companies that do such a great job being willing to allow people to kind of put their fingers against the windows of their team and say, what's it like in there? I think that's very important.
Thank you, Leighton. I think that's important, to put that out, in the space to where it can help you from a recruiting, standpoint, but, also from a retention, standpoint as well, being able to look through that class and, see what a culture, is. But I think it's all, that's just the first step. I think that it's also important to listen, to what's important to the interview process or to your team members, and act on, the things that you're able to act on, or at least communicate, maybe why you can't, in some of the areas, that they be expecting. But especially on the interviewing process and when you're hiring in, we're all looking for A talent, because you can do a lot more work, and I'd rather pay more for, A talent than have to hire a lot of B and C, talent and, struggle, with them. So we look for that, A talent, but at the same time, we listen, because a lot of times they're bringing in, we typically don't hire from within the industry, and that's purposeful, because we typically try to find people from other industries. We're looking for the right person to fill the right roles, and then, bring them into a culture and teach them, the industry that we're in.
And the thing is these generations coming up, because they're the TikTok, Instagram reel, Facebook reel generation, they can sniff out inauthenticity so incredibly quick. They're constantly being placed in front of authentic, real moments. And so if you are not intentional about not only creating this window, but the window being authentic, those teammates coming in will sniff that out so quick. It has to be real.
Alexis, I want to direct this to you, because I think Thomasville's maybe a little bit unique in kind of this brand that they've built. I think if anyone's been to an industry conference, they can see them. I think Alexis is showing it off right now. If you see people walking around in red, what would be your kind of tangible takeaway for an owner operator on the call here about building their own brand? Not everyone's going to build a Thomasville size brand, but how do they build their own brand in their own market that leads to attracting and retaining employees?
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I think it's really about identifying who you want to be and how you want to show up in the world. Because I think that we had this fortunate opportunity that the people who are running this amazing organization have edge to them. So our brand was a reflection of our leadership. We are an edgy brand who prides themselves on local or like local companies, Under Armour, being the hometown hero. And so we just doubled down. And I think brand consistency is also really important. Small things like the way that you advertise on your trucks, the way that your letterhead looks. Is your logo the same colors? Do you know your logo colors? Do you know your fonts? So, but you have the opportunity to create it to be whatever you want. But once you know that it fits you and that's who you want to be and how you want to show up, then it's just about consistently never wavering from that. We know our colors. Half of my leadership knows our hex code, and we're just super intentional about always showing up the same way all the time. And at first I got a lot of pushback about the red shoes and the bright shirts and things like that. But like you said, it's an opportunity to be recognized. I'll never forget sitting I was in the hair salon one day, and I drive a company vehicle, and a lady sitting next to me looks out the window and says, "That is the ugliest wrap I've ever seen in my life." And I was like, I looked over to her and I said, "Why?" She's like, it's just hideous. I would never drive that car. I said, "But let me ask you a question. Would you recognize it if you saw it again?" And she said, "Yeah, absolutely." I said, "That's marketing." I said, "I designed that wrap, by the way." And it was just such a funny moment, because how you decide to show up that's the most important. And the benefit is that your brand, it represents something so much more than colors and logos and designs. It represents how you make your teammates feel. And your teammates will also be the reflection of that when you're working with your customers. So my teammates love putting on their Under Armour t-shirts. So they wear them to date nights with their wives or husbands, and their kids have Thomasville branded because they see daddy and mommy coming home so happy. So we have our kids wearing our t-shirts to school because they believe in what that brand stands for. So first you identify what you want to stand for, and then you create an image that reflects that. But the brand goes so much deeper. What is it that's important to you? I know that a couple of my colleague friends or industry friends at ATI, I know that their ATI is Ronald McDonald House. They stand for supporting that organization. I know Thomasville stands for preventing fires, with giving out smoke detectors in low-income areas. That's what we do. That's our Compassion Day. And our brand stands for something. And when you have that brand association, you think Thomasville, you think red, you think know-how, you think blue. So it's about constantly associating with what matters to you. That's what I would say.
Beyond some of these intangibles, we talked about building company culture. What are some of those tangible benefits that you found, whether it's a compensation structure, healthcare, vacation policy, et cetera, that seems to be the main drivers of retention? Marcy, maybe I'll kick it to you.
Right. So everybody has some different opinions, right? You hear surveys and you hear about pay and different things. And I believe at the end of the day, what people want is tangible things. It's what's going to benefit them, what speaks to them personally, right? And everybody's going to have something that's more important. Benefits to compensation. For us, it is what can they see that they can take home. So we have an incentive package that every employee has, and it's just not project managers or anybody in production. Our people in accounting get an incentive, right? It's something that we're thanking them, because when you think about a company and a cog in the wheel, they're vital. We cannot do our entire company if accounting failed on a piece, right? And so we want to incentivize them and thank them for what they're doing. And so that's part of our benefit package that we give them. We pay for short-term disability for our team, right? That's something that's not everybody has the means to do that, but that's something that's given back, that they know, hey, if you're out, we got you. And what really happened, and I'll touch on a personal story for Guarantee, is that we had some losses. We had some deaths in our employees, and we realized that people were going out of their way, or they didn't have money when they were sick, or long-term cancer illnesses or different things. And so that was something that we don't want people to not be able to worry how they're making ends meet, right, when they're out. So we got you. We're going to pay for your short-term disability when you're out. But those are different things that, hey, speak to them. We do the surveys. Leighton has a survey, what's speaking to everybody. We did internal surveys, like what matters to you, right? Vacation time, stick time, having a little more time for people to go and see their kids' school play, right? That's something that means the world to them. And Leighton touched on it earlier of like the home life. You know, they have the saying, happy wife, happy life. I think it's a happy home, happy work life, right? Is that if you can take an hour out of your day to make your 8-year-old child happy because they saw you in the audience of their play, that's going to come back and wonders, right? I mean, those are one of those things about the ROI, and that you can't necessarily put a price on it. But those are some type of things that you kind of have that flexible hour structure there to give them.
100%. And I think it's so relevant, Marcy, right? Like, providing employees with that sense of security, versus a competitor maybe shows up and offers $1 or $2 more per hour, right? They want to stick with the business that they have that security, that flexibility to go to their kids' sporting events, like you said, right? So
yeah. And and a lot of times when people look at how much you make hourly, right? Well, those things that you don't necessarily see on a paycheck, right? And your pay stub is all of those other things that go into there. And so those are those feel good things. So necessarily of those tangibles, but flexibility, is it worth, $1 more, but I won't be able to go to my doctor's appointment so freely. I won't be able to go to this event for my child. So those are things that necessarily we talk about those tangibles, but they feel it when they leave. And I will tell you, there's been plenty of people that have come back to Guarantee after they left for that one reason, because, hey, they left for a couple of bucks more, but then they didn't have a lot of that flexibility that they really needed that was important to their life.
With that, guys, we do want to move on to topic 3, which is education, career development pathways. I think this is so important. I think it ties into a lot of what we've already spoken about today with, bringing new young talent into the restoration space. The first question, I'm going to direct this over to Leighton, because I feel like you're, one of the utmost experts on this. What training methods best support employee growth and retention?
Well, I think we have to consider three mistakes that, or let's say things that we tend to not give full consideration to. So oftentimes what organizations do, heck, I did this, I was part of a leadership team. We had several hundred locations. We were in the trades industry. We brought in a big, robust learning management system, and we spent tons of money on it, and we were so excited about it. And then nobody used it, like it was just this very low utilization. It was very unfortunate. And one of the mistakes that we made is that we forgot to really think about format, right? And format matters. And so oftentimes when we build learning and training and education, there's someone on your team who's passionate about it, and there's a way that they visualize how a learning experience should occur. And that's unfortunately not the way that I would say you should approach it. How I recommend you approach it is forget about your preference. Often a person who can think strategically around educational design and learning design and all those things, that person is a huge asset, but oftentimes they're an outlier. Look at how young people today use their mobile device to solve knowledge-based problems on the weekend in uncompensated scenarios, how they work on their car, how they make a recipe on the weekend, how they think about solving a knowledge-based problem when they're walking through the mall. At the end of the day, much more powerful than anything that we can cook up as people who want to provide training and support to our people is the direction that consumer technology is in a sense moving the generation to think about how you access and interact with knowledge and solve knowledge-based problems on the go. And we think about that a lot at Know How. So the first thing I would say is when you're thinking about really providing a robust training experience to people, ask yourselves, outside of work, how do they currently solve knowledge-based problems and interact with knowledge? And whatever the format that you land on, I think it should consider for how you maximize that kind of known behavior to a person. The second thing that I would suggest is, I think we all agree that you need to have some way of getting someone up to speed, often referred to as like an onboarding path, a roadmap, and something like that. And there's kind of a paradox there, because companies that maybe don't have let's compare a company that has no onboarding support versus someone who has a very robust onboarding program. Well, someone who has, that offers nothing, it's not recommended, right? But you kind of have this ignorance is bliss moment for a worker. Like they don't know what they don't know what they're missing out on. And so everything just kind of hits them in the face. As opposed to the other extreme is someone creates this robust, enormous onboarding experience where the person feels overwhelmed with the role and overwhelmed with the training. And what they're left with is simply this draining bucket of there's a sense of a dread that there's so much that I've forgotten, from my onboarding. And so what's the middle ground? I think the middle ground is we have to remember that we work with people or people powered industry where they use knowledge constantly with their mobile devices. We all know that retention and memory rates are very low. I mean, I have a hard time remembering phone numbers in my life, right? We rely on technology for just-in-time knowledge. And so I would say number one is that we have to think about knowledge and education resources that look a lot like the way people use their mobile devices in uncompensated environments to be able to solve knowledge-based problems. Two, I think we have to just accept that people do not retain knowledge in the way they used to. So knowledge has to be retrievable and easy to access. The third thing we have to consider is that a lot of people that get into the trades and get into service industries and kind of blue collar workforces, oftentimes they purposely avoided university and college and stuff like that. So meaning that sometimes they have testing anxiety. There's a higher prevalence of dyslexic learners, people that, the idea of sitting down and having to commit 3 hours to a learning activity could create a fair bit of anxiety. And so it has to be more dynamic. It has to be something that's a little bit more favors on the go, on the job. And then the final thing that I would consider for is that I think people need to find ways of being able to add more segmentation to their learning. A lot of people in this industry, they don't have, big degrees and certifications and degrees that show the world that they've made educational progress. But there's very easy ways today at work where, once you know how to maintain all the equipment, you get kind of a certification that you understand how to maintain our equipment, or once you kind of move through something that's a part of our service delivery, the ability to create, I would say, in a sense, almost ways of recognizing even micro little advancements gives a person a sense of pride, gives a person a sense that they've made progress in their education. And people don't leave companies that where they think that ultimately they would, let's call it their accomplishments would evaporate if they left somewhere else.
Totally agree. I think that's some really great insight, Layden. I want to take a 30-second detour here because we got a really great question from Elizabeth. And Ben, I want to direct this over to you because you mentioned this. I thought it was super interesting. She's saying, I fear the employment pool in the next coming years is going to be weak. How do we retain new employees? How do we bring in non-industry green skill? I know you said that's something that Southeast does a lot of. How would you take someone from outside of industry, completely green, and bring them to that Southeast A player as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I saw Elizabeth's question, and it is a good one. I think we have to get creative, looking at different service industries or higher education facilities and and schools, and seeing if, depending on the generation and what we're looking at, and showing them the benefit of what we do as an industry. We're able to go in and help people on a daily basis at some of their worst times with some of their largest assets. And I think our industry has still got a lot of room to grow in far as educating the public, and what we can share and what kind of opportunities are out there. We were talking about the next generation, and fortunately or unfortunately, my kids didn't have a choice. They kind of grew up in the industry, and but they had the choice and I've got one that she has said she's getting as far away from the industry as she can, and that's fine too. But with those that are in it, I will tell you from my personal experience, and with my kids, it's the industry's been good to me and to my family and to the families of Southeast Restoration, and it's something that it's satisfying to be able to do these. Is it hard? Is it frustrating at times? Is there a lot of red tape and things that we're having to deal with and jump through? Absolutely. But every industry has those same things. So as far as going out and recruiting people from outside the industry. And I can't disagree with Elizabeth. I'm also fearful of what the next generation is going to bring, because I see a lot of enablement and selfishly a lot of laziness with the technology that's put in front of them and not used to the benefit that it could be. And so I think we're going to have to do a lot of retraining when we get those in there, but showing them a roadmap to success and kind of what their future could look like. And because they're being told, especially those that are in college, how much money they should be making and should be worth, and how little they should have to work to make that. And I think that's a scary proposition that not only our industry and we have to overcome, but everybody is going to be dealing with the same thing. So as a society, we have to be clear with our expectations and make sure that we're helping grow these people, not only professionally but personally as well.
Absolutely. And I know one thing that I've, started doing personally when I'm hiring for my team, and, some of the best advice that I've gotten is, look for those skills that you're looking for in the role, right? Because the actual hard technical skills can be taught if someone's exhibiting, if they have great customer service, great organizational skills, the ability to manage projects, right? Whatever they might be, they can be taught how to structurally dry a building, right? But if someone comes in with those, A+ skills across the board, it's really not a long transition to making them successful in the restoration space. And that could come from a ton of different industries, right? So opening up, where you're looking is fantastic.
Yeah.
Chris, if I could comment really quickly to Elizabeth's question, I think it's such an important question. Two things. One is, I would encourage people to think about it at a departmental level. So I think some roles are easier to hire from non-industry. So for example, we know that 65% of individuals that move into administrative roles in restoration have never worked in general construction. That's it. That tends to be not as intense of a transition where you're just coming from administration to administration. And so I think there's an opportunity to not paint with a whole brush. The second thing is that I think we would all agree that when one person says, I'm bringing experienced people into my team, sometimes what you're saying is, especially when, to Alexis's point and to Marcy's point around rich, thick cultures, what is easier? Is it easier to start from scratch, or is it easier to rewire someone, right? Because sometimes actually by bringing someone in who's experienced, there's actually an element of rewiring that has to happen. And I think you have to factor that in. And you got to, I think what the saying this year, pick your heart. I think that's like the saying for 2024.
This has been fantastic. I have two more questions that I really want to get through. The first one is for Marcy. Marcy, what would you say, or how would you say the role or building of structured career paths in restoration can help lead to retention? What are some practical things that Guarantee has done, to build a structured career path? Someone from maybe technician, where would they move up from there?
Yeah, I mean, to everybody's topic, so speaking points a little while, is that you have to show them that there is a successful and meaningful career within this industry. And a career pathway is that of like somebody coming in, and secondary education is not for everybody. And so we talk about long-term retention. How are we going to, in the future, continue to grow where we are? Well, you have to create it, right? You have to create that pathway where somebody is going to go from a technician to a lead tech, to a project manager, and up and where they want. And so at Guarantee, we have 3 levels of a career pathway for every position, right? And it goes through the things that they have to hit on level 1, level 2, level 3. And within that whole time, we have talks of, where do you want to be? Just because here's level 1, 2, 3 and a technician, do you want to be a project manager? Do you want to maybe go in our claims department? Do you want to go into, say, construction? We will sit there and kind of work and tailor a pathway for them. But where we have it, everybody knows this is your career pathway. If you want to go, take it. This is all the training opportunities that we're given, but not even just job specific, Chris, but we have financial education, right? We have things, how can they grow them? Because again, going back to the person, we truly and strongly believe that the better person is within themselves, we're going to have a better employee. And so all of this career development also is a person development. And so those go hand in hand to what we're doing to create long-term retention for our employees and for our company. And to something Leighton had said about, or when we were talking about answering Elizabeth's question, is some of the things that we're looking for when we're hiring is number one, values, right? And we have to tell people when we're looking, because growth, you can't grow everybody internally. You're going to have to pull some people in, right? But I can't tell you how many college career fairs I've gone to that are gone to like construction management, and people don't know about the restoration industry. And we got to speak to them, because not everybody wants to go a job. They want to have something that has value and that has meaning, and they're pouring back into somebody's life, and tell them, hey, the restoration industry is out here. You can have a successful career that's not what you're necessarily went to school for, but it has a lot of tools that are going to help you in your career in restoration. So just wanted to kind of tangent on that with the pathway development there.
Absolutely. And I think you and Ben and Alexa have all touched on it, right? But I think what everyone's really looking for is understanding, that there's successful pathways for me to, build a career, support my family if I bust my butt. And what does that look like, right?
Absolutely.
And it's that almost, branding for the restoration industry to get the name out there of here's, a pathway for you, right? So
right.
Totally agree.
Chris, if I just highlight something that Marcy
absolutely.
said, is that, and keep in mind, what Marcy is talking about is the power of anticipation. And anticipation doesn't cost you anything. Anticipation can get you through a tough day, because I know that, what's next, or in 6 months, or just 2 months from now, or in 3 weeks, this happens, or this is available to me. Anticipation doesn't cost you anything. And when a person knows that there's sunnier days ahead, they'll stick around.
With that, guys, I'm going to hop into our conclusion here, because we are a little bit short on time. Once again, this was fantastic information, and I think we'll probably have to do a follow-up. This was a fantastic cast. I think you can see by every single person staying on for the entirety of this thing how important it is to their business. I do want to give everyone an opportunity, maybe 30 seconds for closing remarks. What is kind of the one takeaway the audience should have today? What is one thing you would recommend implementing in your business? Alexis, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be having a conversation. The thing you can do right now today after you leave this is have a conversation with your leadership team and be ready just to receive any feedback, information, and opportunity that there might be. I think there's that. And then the other side of it, I think it's about making sure that you find the person within your organization who is as passionate about company culture as you are, and talk to them. Take them out to lunch, spend some time with them, get in the truck with your guys, do ride-alongs. Those are all opportunities to invest time, and time is money, right? But it's not an immediate investment out of your budget. Invest some time, spend it with your teammates, and just listen. They want to tell you what they want. They know what's important to them, and they'll communicate it with you. So every single time I've gotten out of a ride along, I have come back to the organization with an idea and something that I could do to help benefit the company culture. And when you're benefiting the company culture, you are focusing on retention. Guys from Encircle, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful. And please, if anybody has any questions or would like to connect, please feel free. My full name, you can find me on LinkedIn. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Marcy, over to you. One takeaway from today.
One thing that one of my favorite books is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. And one of my favorite quotes in there is emotional labor is part of leadership. And when we're talking about retention and we're talking about culture, is that we have to remember that we have to reach our employees where they are and as the person. And so for all of us older ones that are getting to that, we always kind of say work is work and home is home. Well, realizing what Alexa said earlier about community is they spend so much time with us and we ask so much of them, is to remember to invest in them emotionally and to ask them questions of how are they doing. To Leighton's point, remembering names. Dale Carnegie said the sweetest sound is the name of somebody's name, right? When they hear their own name. And so I think when we're really investing and just connecting to the people emotionally, it's going to have huge rewards for us as companies.
Awesome. We'll go Ben and then Layden to wrap things up.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all having me on here. I couldn't agree more with what Alexis and Marcy has shared. So to share something, from a different light, I think a couple of things. Be creative. We're all dealing with the same struggles and looking to the same, people in this service industry. So in order to separate yourself, be creative. Go outside of this industry, but I call it R&D, rip off and duplicate. The great ideas that come from other places, and implement them in your workplace and in our industry, because others can take from us. It'll make us a better industry altogether. And then, make sure your people know, have a rhythm in place, whether it's ride-alongs that Alexis talked about, or, one-on-ones, or whatever it is, but have a consistent rhythm. And where you are listening to your team and doing something about with the things that they share. We can't do everything. They don't understand, down to the nuts and bolts and, every piece of the equation, but there are good ideas that come out of there. But if you listen to those and implement those suggestions from the team members, I think it makes our industry and your organization, stronger. So Marcy, you had a quote, one of my famous favorite philosophers, the Zig Ziglar, says, you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. So if we'll follow that. It took me a long time to get that and to understand it. But as soon as I did, the switch turned, and you put everybody's needs in front of yours, and good things will happen.
Layden, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, two quick things. One is to attendees here, you could talk to everyone here one-on-one if you come to the RA convention next year. Because I'm pretty sure everyone here is attending that. And so come and let's talk about this stuff in person. And the second thing is, I think it was very significant when Walmart made a pretty big announcement recently where they're changing a huge part of how they think about the workforce. You may have saw some articles that went out that they kind of are moving away from this kind of DEI movement. And what are they replacing with it? They said belonging. That's what they're after, belonging, because they recognize that the most important thing to the emerging workforce is I want to work in a place where I feel like I belong. And to Alexis's point earlier, where that woman was giving her a hard time at the salon, at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in build a weird culture. Build a culture where it's easier for people on your team to say, well, that's okay, but we're a little weird. Or it's like, or just like maybe you wouldn't be part of this, but I'm a big believer in belonging is going to be the superpower of companies in this industry in the years to come. Can you offer belonging?
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. Once again, guys, this was an unbelievably engaging discussion. I think it's super important. We'll probably have to have a follow-up to it at some point. So Marcy, Alexis, Ben, and Layden, thank you so much for joining. And for all of our attendees, thank you so much for sticking around and hearing us chat for an hour. Really appreciate it.